It was a quiet afternoon at the Grand Harrison mansion, the kind of silence that usually only came when the household staff had settled into their routines and the wealthy owner of the house, Mr. Harrison, was away on business. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors, and the faint ticking of the antique clock in the hallway was the only sound breaking the stillness. Normally, the mansion would have been alive with activity, maids dusting the furniture, cooks preparing meals, and the soft murmur of voices moving about, but today, everything felt different, almost too calm. Mr. Harrison had left early in the morning for what he had described to everyone as a short business trip, one he thought would take only a couple of days. He had assured his staff that everything would continue as usual and that they shouldn't worry about his absence. Yet, as the hours passed, Clara, his trusted maid, noticed a strange unease settling in the house. She kept checking the main entrance, half expecting him to walk through the door at any moment, even though the schedule suggested otherwise. Something in the air made her nervous, though she couldn't explain why. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison's car, sleek and black, rolled quietly down the long driveway, its engine humming softly. He had returned earlier than expected because a meeting had been cancelled, leaving him with time to head home sooner. He had imagined walking into his familiar mansion, greeted by smiling staff, the aroma of fresh food, and the comfortable luxury that surrounded his life. But as he approached, he noticed the mansion seemed almost deserted. The curtains in the windows were drawn in perfect symmetry, the gardens perfectly trimmed, but there was a stillness that didn't feel right. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Clara, who was tidying up the main hall, froze when she heard the car pull up. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively moved to the side, hoping to prepare herself for his arrival. She knew Mr. Harrison preferred order and precision in everything, and any sign of chaos in the house could upset him. But what she saw as she looked at the driveway didn't calm her. His car was there, yes, but there was something different about the way it arrived, something abrupt and sudden, almost urgent. The front door opened, and Mr. Harrison stepped inside. Normally, the sound of the heavy door closing behind him would have felt reassuring, grounding, but today it seemed loud, almost startling. He called out a casual, "Hello," as he entered the hall, expecting a cheerful response from the staff, a smile, or at least the quiet shuffle of someone coming forward to greet him. Instead, there was nothing. Silence. A deep, heavy silence that made him pause in the center of the hall. The chandeliers above reflected the sunlight, creating dazzling patterns on the floor, but the usual warmth of the house, the small signs of life he loved, was missing. Clara appeared at that moment, her movements hurried and hesitant. She approached him, but instead of greeting him with her usual calm smile, her face was pale, and her eyes darted nervously around the hall. There was a tension in her stance, something he had never seen before, even in stressful situations. She leaned toward him, lowering her voice almost to a whisper, and said words that sent a chill down his spine, "Stay quiet." He froze. "Stay quiet," he repeated, his voice firm but tinged with curiosity and concern. There was a strange urgency in her tone, a fear that he couldn't quite place. What could possibly be happening in his home that made his trusted maid warn him to remain silent? For a moment, he looked around the hall, noticing things he had never paid much attention to before. The furniture was in place, but somehow, the air felt heavier, almost charged, like something was waiting to be discovered. The faintest sound came from upstairs, a soft creak of a floorboard, a whisper of movement, though no one should be there. The house, which usually felt like a fortress of comfort and control, now seemed mysterious, almost threatening in its quietness. Clara stepped back slightly, glancing at the staircase as if urging him to follow her silently. Mr. Harrison's mind raced. He was used to controlling situations, used to understanding what was happening in every corner of his life, but this was different. This was unexpected, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. The house he had walked into countless times now felt like an entirely new world, one full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. As he moved further into the hall, his senses heightened. Every shadow, every whisper of sound, every glint of sunlight on the floor seemed to suggest that something extraordinary, or terrifying, was about to be revealed. He didn't know what Clara was trying to protect him from, but he instinctively knew that this was the beginning of something shocking, something that would change the way he saw his own home forever. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she led Mr. Harrison further into the mansion, her steps hesitant and careful, as though even the slightest sound could summon danger. She had been working in the Harrison household for over 5 years and had always been calm, confident, and collected, but today was different. Something had shaken her deeply, something she could not explain in words, and yet she knew she had to protect her employer at all costs. Her usual poise had vanished, replaced with a nervous energy that made her movements jerky and her voice tight. "Sir, please," she murmured again, almost under her breath, "stay quiet." Her words were soft, almost pleading, yet there was a weight behind them, a silent warning that froze Mr. Harrison in his tracks. He had faced boardroom battles, business crises, and even personal betrayals, but nothing in his life had ever made him feel this unsettled inside his own home. He studied her closely. Her eyes were wide, darting toward the staircase and then back at him, as if she was expecting something, or someone, to appear at any moment. Normally, he would have laughed at such theatrics or brushed it off as unnecessary worry, but today, there was something in her expression that told him this was serious. Her face, usually calm and composed, was pale, almost ghostly under the sunlight streaming through the windows. There was a tension in her shoulders, a quiver in her voice, and a hesitance in every movement. It was unlike anything he had ever seen in her. "Clara, what is going on?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady, masking the unease growing inside him. "Why are you acting like this? What have I walked into?" She paused, her eyes glancing toward the grand staircase leading to the upper floors. She seemed to consider her words carefully before speaking, as if the wrong sentence could trigger disaster. "Sir, I can't explain everything right now," she said softly, "but something happened while you were away, something unexpected." Her voice trembled slightly, and she swallowed hard before continuing. I didn't know whether to tell you. I was trying to protect you." Mr. Harrison felt a shiver run down his spine. Protect him? From what? The thought of danger in his own house, something hidden behind doors and walls he knew better than anyone, was almost unbearable. He had always believed that wealth and control could shield him from surprises, but Clara's nervous behavior suggested that even the walls of his grand mansion were not immune to secrets and threats. She led him through the long hallway, past portraits of family members staring down from the walls, their painted eyes seeming almost alive in the afternoon light. Mr. Harrison's mind raced as he tried to piece together the possibilities. Could it be a break-in? Had someone trespassed while he was away? Or was it something more personal, someone he trusted, someone close, betraying him from within? Clara stopped near the foot of the staircase, glancing back at him once more. "Sir, whatever happens next, please, don't panic. Just trust me for now," she whispered, her hand hovering over the banister as if ready to pull him back at a moment's notice. Her unease was contagious, and Mr. Harrison realized that every instinct he had, his sharp intuition honed from years of navigating business and life, was telling him that this was serious, that the calm he had felt before was only an illusion. For a brief moment, silence fell between them. The mansion felt heavier now, charged with tension, each creak of the floorboards amplified in the stillness. Clara's eyes scanned the hallway, then the staircase, then back to him, as though measuring his reactions. There was a subtle urgency in her demeanor, a silent plea: act carefully, step lightly, and don't draw attention to what was waiting. Mr. Harrison, ever composed in public, felt his pulse quicken. He realized that today, no amount of wealth, power, or control could prepare him for what was about to unfold. Clara's uneasy behavior, the trembling in her voice, and the haunted look in her eyes were signs that this was no ordinary disturbance. It was personal, it was dangerous, and it was hidden in a place he had trusted above all else, his home. He took a slow, measured breath and nodded to Clara. "All right," he said quietly, his eyes scanning every corner of the hall, "I'm staying quiet, for now. But I need you to guide me. Show me what's happening." Clara nodded, almost imperceptibly, relieved that he understood. She moved toward the staircase, pausing with each step, her senses alert to the slightest sound. Mr. Harrison followed, silent and tense, ready for anything. The uneasy energy that Clara carried seemed to fill the air, making every shadow longer, every sound sharper. He realized then that the shocking truth behind her warning was waiting just beyond the next doorway, waiting to change everything he thought he knew about his home, his staff, and perhaps even himself. As Mr. Harrison followed Clara up the staircase, the air in the mansion felt heavier, thicker, as though the very walls were holding their breath. Every step they took seemed amplified in the silence, each creak of the polished wooden floors echoing through the empty halls. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows created long shadows that danced across the walls, and for the first time, Mr. Harrison felt that the house he had known all his life was almost unfamiliar, secretive, and alive in a way he could not explain. Clara moved cautiously, glancing over her shoulder constantly, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. "Sir. I really need you to be careful," she whispered, her voice trembling just enough to make him shiver. "I don't know what we might find, but it's not safe to rush. Everything in this house looks normal, but right now, normal is dangerous." Mr. Harrison's mind raced. What could be so dangerous in his home that Clara, his most trusted staff member, was this terrified? He had faced hostile business partners, legal threats, even betrayal by friends and associates, but nothing had ever made him feel this vulnerable in his own space. And yet, the tension in Clara's voice and the wary glances she kept throwing at the shadows told him this was real, urgent, and very personal. They reached the second floor, where the hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with doors that led to rooms he barely used anymore. He noticed small signs that something was out of place, an unusual draft from a slightly open window, a faint scuff mark on the polished floor, and the subtle, almost imperceptible scent of perfume that he didn't recognize. These tiny details, which normally would have gone unnoticed, now felt like clues, each one hinting that someone had been there, someone who did not belong. Clara stopped in front of one door, her hand hovering over the handle. She looked at him nervously. "This is it," she said softly. "It's behind here. Whatever it is. I think you should know the truth, but you have to be ready for it. It's shocking." Mr. Harrison's heart pounded in his chest. His mind flashed through endless possibilities. Could it be an intruder? A thief? Or worse, someone he trusted, hiding a secret right under his nose? The thought made his stomach churn, but he kept his composure, remembering that panic never helped in situations like this. He nodded slowly. "All right, Clara. Show me. I'm ready." She took a deep breath and opened the door. Immediately, a faint chill escaped from the room, brushing across his skin like a warning. The room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn halfway, and at first glance, it seemed ordinary. But something about it felt wrong, unnatural, like the air itself was holding secrets. There was a small desk with papers scattered across it, a chair tipped slightly to the side, and an open drawer that hadn't been touched in years. Every item seemed out of place, and every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should, as if hiding something just out of sight. Clara stepped inside, her movements careful, almost as if she were tiptoeing around an invisible threat. "Sir. I only came in here briefly while you were away," she murmured, "and I didn't touch anything, I swear. But, something happened, and I didn't know who else to tell. I didn't want you to get hurt." Mr. Harrison looked around the room, trying to make sense of it. His sharp mind caught on the irregularities, the faint footprints on the carpet, a small chair pulled away from the desk as if someone had been hiding, and a half-open window that led to the balcony. Each tiny detail built a picture in his mind, and the unease that had been creeping through him now became undeniable. Something, or someone, had been in his home, and it had been intentional. He turned to Clara. "Why didn't anyone else see this? Why didn't the security notice anything?" he asked quietly, trying to control the rising tension in his voice. Clara's eyes filled with guilt and fear. I don't know, sir." That's why I told you to stay quiet. I was afraid if anyone else heard us or tried to get involved, it could make things worse. I thought you needed to see this for yourself first, to understand before we did anything else." Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. His mind, usually so calm and calculated, was now spinning with questions. Whoever had been here had left signs, hints, and perhaps even traps, and the thought that someone could operate inside his house without his knowledge sent a shiver down his spine. The room, quiet yet tense, seemed to stretch on endlessly, and with every second, the suspense grew heavier. Mr. Harrison realized that this was more than a simple disturbance, it was personal, calculated, and dangerous. Clara's unease had been justified, and now he understood why her warning had been so urgent. Something shocking awaited, and it was just beyond the next moment. Clara paused at the top of the staircase, her hand trembling slightly as she pointed toward a door at the far end of the hallway. It was a door Mr. Harrison had almost forgotten existed, one he rarely opened and whose contents he had never thought much about. The room had always been labeled as storage, a place for old furniture, unused files, and forgotten memories. Yet today, that mundane label seemed almost deceptive. There was a sense of weight behind the door, a silent warning that told him, this was the room where the truth waited. "Sir," Clara whispered, her voice tight with fear, "I didn't come here often myself. I was told to never touch anything inside, to leave it alone, but when I noticed something unusual while you were away, I couldn't ignore it." Her eyes darted nervously down the hallway, then back at him, as if scanning for a threat. "Whatever is in there, it's not normal, and I think you need to see it yourself." Mr. Harrison's pulse quickened. He had faced danger before, yes, but always in the outside world, in boardrooms, in negotiations, in deals gone wrong. Never had he imagined that a threat could be hiding inside his own home, in a room he had long dismissed as unimportant. Yet the tension in Clara's voice, the fear in her eyes, and the strange stillness in the mansion told him that this was serious. This was real. He moved toward the door, each step measured, his senses alert. The polished floor beneath his feet reflected the afternoon sunlight, but shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, almost as if they were hiding something just beyond view. Clara followed closely, her hand hovering over the doorknob as if she feared it might spring open to reveal something terrifying the moment it was touched. "Ready?" she whispered, barely audible, but the words carried an urgency that made him nod. He grasped the cold brass handle and pushed the door open slowly. The hinges groaned softly, a sound that echoed through the silent hallway. The room inside was dim, dust motes floating in the streams of light that sneaked through the curtains. At first glance, it seemed like any other storage room, old furniture stacked in corners, boxes piled high, and shelves filled with forgotten files. But there was something off. Something that made the air feel heavier, almost alive. Mr. Harrison stepped inside, his eyes scanning every corner. A chair had been moved slightly from its usual position. A stack of papers lay scattered on a desk that had never been touched in years. And on the floor, faint footprints marked a path toward the far corner, leading to a part of the room that had always been empty, or so he had thought. Clara moved closer to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Sir, when I came here before, I noticed things were different. Someone's been in this room. I tried to leave it as I found it, but I couldn't ignore the signs. That's why I told you to stay quiet. I didn't want anyone else involved. I didn't want anyone else to see what I saw." Mr. Harrison's brow furrowed. His mansion, a symbol of wealth, control, and power, suddenly felt like a puzzle with a missing piece. Someone had breached his sanctuary, someone had been careful enough to hide it from the rest of the staff, but not careful enough to escape Clara's notice. And now, he was standing at the threshold of the room where everything would be revealed. He approached the far corner, and his eyes fell on a small, partially hidden door embedded in the wall. It was so subtle that he had never noticed it before. The hinges were worn, but the lock was intact. Clara swallowed hard. "Sir, this door. I've never dared open it. No one was supposed to." But I think, what's behind it, it's what caused everything. Mr. Harrison's heart raced. He reached out and turned the handle slowly, every muscle in his body tense. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow space that seemed almost like a secret chamber. Inside, the faint smell of old paper and something metallic lingered. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and what he saw made his breath catch in his throat. It wasn't just a room filled with forgotten items or old furniture. It was a place where secrets had been hidden, evidence of betrayal, and traces of something, or someone, he never expected to find in his own home. The realization hit him like a wave. The shocking truth Clara had been warning him about was real, and it was more personal than he could have imagined. Clara stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm lightly, almost as if grounding him. "Sir. I didn't want you to find this like this. But now that you're here, you need to know. The truth, it's waiting for you." Mr. Harrison swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the chamber, his mind racing with questions, fears, and the sudden certainty that his life was about to change forever. Mr. Harrison's eyes widened as he stepped fully into the secret chamber, his mind struggling to process what lay before him. He had imagined many things when Clara had whispered, "Stay quiet," but nothing could have prepared him for this. The room was small, dimly lit, and filled with objects that carried heavy meaning, papers, photographs, and personal items that seemed to scream of secrets kept for years. At first, his gaze fell on a stack of letters tied with a red ribbon, their edges yellowed with age, and his heart skipped a beat. He untied the ribbon with trembling hands, and as he read the first letter, his stomach sank. The words revealed plans and betrayals he had never suspected, plans that involved people he trusted implicitly, people he had welcomed into his life without hesitation. Yet now, in this hidden room, all those illusions were shattered. Clara stood close by, watching him carefully, her eyes wide but steady. "Sir. I didn't know how to tell you," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of his rapid breathing. "I only discovered this a few days ago, and I couldn't risk anyone else seeing it, not until you came back, not until you could see for yourself." As he read further, Mr. Harrison's shock deepened. The letters detailed secret dealings, financial manipulations, and betrayals by someone inside his closest circle, someone he had considered loyal. His blood ran cold as he realized that the danger Clara had sensed was not random, not external. It had been inside the mansion all along, hidden behind polite smiles and courteous manners. Then his eyes fell on photographs scattered across the floor. Some were ordinary family photos, but others were far more incriminating, showing clandestine meetings, hidden exchanges, and moments meant to be secret. His mind raced, connecting faces, dates, and events, and the full picture began to emerge, terrifying in its clarity. Clara stepped closer, her hand trembling as she pointed to one photograph. "Sir, this one," she whispered. "I found it tucked behind the books in the library. I couldn't believe it at first, but it proves everything. It proves why I was so afraid, why I told you to stay quiet." Mr. Harrison stared at the photograph, his chest tightening, his eyes narrowed as he recognized a familiar face, someone he had trusted implicitly, someone he had considered family. The betrayal was so personal, so deliberate, that it made his head spin. He had never imagined that someone so close could orchestrate such deception right under his nose. His mind reeled with questions, yet amidst the chaos, one truth became undeniable. The mansion he thought was safe, the life he believed was secure, was built on illusions. The hidden room, Clara's fearful warning, and the evidence before him revealed a story of greed, ambition, and betrayal that had been carefully concealed for years. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint rustle of papers as Mr. Harrison set down one letter and picked up another, each revealing more shocking truths. Each new discovery compounded the horror, but also clarified the situation, giving him the power to understand the depth of the deception. Finally, he looked at Clara, his eyes a mix of disbelief, anger, and gratitude. "I understand now," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "I understand why you warned me, why you asked me to stay quiet. The truth, it's worse than I imagined, but thanks to you, I know it before it's too late." Clara exhaled, relief flooding her face. "Sir. I just wanted to protect you. I didn't want anyone else to get hurt. I didn't know how much you already suspected, but now that you see it, maybe we can fix this." Mr. Harrison nodded, a grim determination settling over him. The shock remained, but alongside it came clarity. The hidden room, the letters, the photographs, all of it revealed the truth he needed to face, and though it was painful, it was also liberating. He now knew exactly where the danger lay, who to trust, and what steps to take next. In that moment, standing in the secret chamber, surrounded by the hidden evidence of betrayal, Mr. Harrison realized that his life had changed forever. The shocking truth Clara had warned him about was finally clear, and there was no going back. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and control, had revealed its darkest secret, and he now had the power, and the responsibility, to confront it. Mr. Harrison stood in the secret chamber, the letters and photographs spread around him like a map of betrayal. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the furious clarity that had replaced the confusion he had felt moments ago. He had always considered himself a man of control, a man who could anticipate every move, every consequence, every lie, but now he realized that someone close to him had outmaneuvered even him. The thought was unbearable. Clara watched him nervously, her heart pounding, knowing that the moment of confrontation had arrived. She had always admired Mr. Harrison for his calm composure, his decisiveness, but this situation was different. There was no negotiation, no business strategy that could fix what had been done. This was personal, deep, and painful. A faint sound from downstairs caught their attention. Mr. Harrison's sharp instincts told him that someone else had returned to the house, or perhaps had been watching, waiting for the right moment. He motioned to Clara to stay back and moved toward the staircase silently, the letters clutched in one hand, the photographs in the other. His mind raced with possibilities. Was the betrayer still in the house? Had they come to finish what they started? Every step was calculated, his senses heightened to an almost unbearable degree. At the bottom of the staircase, he saw a figure in the shadows, a familiar figure, someone he had trusted implicitly, someone whose betrayal had been revealed in those letters and photographs. The person froze when they noticed him, eyes wide, heart racing, the casual mask of civility shattered. Why? Mr. Harrison's voice was quiet but carried the weight of disbelief and anger. Why betray me? Why do all of this behind my back, in my own home? His words were measured, but every syllable cut deep, exposing the raw pain that had been buried beneath years of trust. The figure stammered, unable to meet his gaze. I had no choice, they whispered, their voice shaking. It was necessary. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought you would understand. Understand? Mr. Harrison's laugh was hollow, bitter. Do you have any idea what this has done? How long I've been deceived? How much danger you've put everyone in? The anger in his voice grew, but beneath it was a sharp, cold clarity. He was no longer confused, no longer vulnerable. He understood exactly what had happened, exactly who was involved, and exactly how to respond. Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. Sir, we can handle this carefully. We can make sure it ends here without further harm. But you have to decide quickly. Her words reminded him that hesitation now could cost him even more. The betrayer's face fell, the realization of being caught evident. They tried to explain, to justify, but every word seemed weaker, hollow against the overwhelming truth. The evidence in the hidden room had spoken louder than any apology or excuse ever could. Mr. Harrison's mind raced, weighing the options, considering the consequences. Revenge? Forgiveness? Exposure? Every instinct he had honed over years in business and life told him that action was required, but he also knew the human cost of rash decisions. He took a deep breath, the anger within him mingling with a sense of responsibility, a duty to protect not just himself but the people around him. You thought you could deceive me in my own home, he said finally, his voice cold and controlled, but you underestimated me. You underestimated Clara. You underestimated the truth itself. His gaze sharpened, cutting through the room like a blade. From this moment on, nothing is hidden. Everything is out in the open. And you will answer for every choice you've made. The betrayer's eyes widened, the full weight of their actions crashing down. They realized that the comfortable web of lies they had relied upon had collapsed, that the man they had tried to manipulate was now fully aware, fully prepared, and fully capable of controlling the outcome. Clara exhaled quietly, relief flooding her face. The confrontation had begun, but thanks to her caution, it was being handled carefully. The dangerous uncertainty that had haunted the mansion for days was now being replaced by clarity and control. Mr. Harrison stepped back, surveying the room, the letters, the photographs, and the figure before him. The shock of the revelation still lingered, but the fury had transformed into a sharp, precise resolve. The confrontation had stripped away pretense, exposed hidden truths, and laid bare the consequences of betrayal. For the first time in hours, he felt a sense of focus, a sense of direction. The mansion, once a place of comfort and routine, had revealed its darkest secret, and now it was up to him to decide how the story would end. The shock of discovery had passed, but the confrontation had just begun, and every word, every decision from this point forward would determine the future. The confrontation had left the mansion unusually quiet. Mr. Harrison stood in the grand hall, his mind still buzzing with anger, disbelief, and a strange, heavy sadness. The figure who had betrayed him sat across the room, slumped in defeat, their usual arrogance replaced with shame and fear. Clara, still tense, lingered nearby, her eyes flicking nervously between them, unsure of how the next moments would unfold. The house, once a symbol of comfort and control, now felt like a stage where the consequences of hidden truths were playing out. Mr. Harrison sank into a chair, trying to steady his racing thoughts. The letters, the photographs, the secret room, they had revealed betrayals he could never have imagined. People he trusted implicitly had acted in secret, manipulating events, deceiving him, and risking everything for their own gain. The emotional weight of it all pressed down on him like a physical force, threatening to crush the carefully built composure he always relied on. Clara approached him cautiously. "Sir. I know this is hard," she said softly, "but at least you know the truth now. That's the first step. You can't change what's been done, but you can decide what happens next." Her words carried both reassurance and urgency. She had seen this kind of betrayal before, in other households, but never with the intensity of Mr. Harrison's world, a world of wealth, influence, and secrets carefully guarded. He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but now it was mixed with a profound sadness. The realization that someone so close had deliberately deceived him gnawed at him, and for the first time, he questioned not just the loyalty of others but the very nature of trust itself. How could someone he considered family risk so much, lie so convincingly, and manipulate events behind his back? The emotional fallout of this discovery was far greater than he had anticipated. Across the room, the betrayer avoided his gaze, their shoulders slumped, unable to speak. Mr. Harrison's eyes softened slightly, not from forgiveness but from the stark recognition that anger alone could not undo what had happened. There was no simple punishment that could erase years of deceit, no apology that could mend the broken trust. The consequences were real, and they would shape every decision he made from this point forward. Clara stayed silent, giving him space to process the whirlwind of emotions. She knew better than to try to fill the silence with empty reassurances. He needed to confront his feelings, to weigh his options, and to consider the ramifications of every action. She had seen people make hasty decisions in moments of betrayal, only to regret them later. Mr. Harrison, she knew, was not that kind of man. He would act, but carefully, and with intention. He rose from his chair, pacing slowly around the room, absorbing the gravity of the situation. The mansion, normally vibrant with life and activity, now felt cold and unfamiliar. Every corner seemed to whisper reminders of the hidden truths that had been uncovered. The emotional fallout was more than just personal anger, it was a reckoning. His sense of security, his assumptions about loyalty, and even his perception of the people around him had been shattered, leaving him to navigate the aftermath with both caution and resolve. Finally, he stopped and turned toward Clara. "We have to decide what to do next," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "The truth is out. The betrayal has been revealed. But how we handle it, that will define everything from now on. This isn't just about anger, it's about preventing further damage, protecting what matters, and ensuring that this never happens again. Clara nodded, relief flickering across her face. I understand, sir. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. We'll fix this together. Her words were simple but powerful, a reminder that even in the midst of betrayal, loyalty and trust could still exist, and that sometimes, it was the people who remained steadfast that made all the difference. Mr. Harrison exhaled slowly, the weight of the revelations pressing down on him, but also giving him clarity. The emotional fallout would take time to process, and the mansion itself would never feel the same, but for the first time since discovering the hidden room, he felt a glimmer of control. He had the truth, and with it, the power to make decisions that would shape the future. In that quiet, tense moment, the mansion felt alive again, not with secrets, but with possibility. The betrayal had tested him, shaken him to his core, and exposed vulnerabilities he hadn't acknowledged. Yet it also revealed resilience, determination, and the enduring strength of those who remained loyal. The emotional fallout was painful, yes, but it was also transformative. It marked the beginning of a reckoning, a path forward, and the promise that the shocking truths of the past could be faced head-on. The mansion was silent now, but the air was thick with tension. Every corner seemed to hold the weight of what had been discovered, every shadow a reminder of the secrets that had been hidden for years. Mr. Harrison stood in the grand hall, the letters and photographs still in his hands, and looked at Clara. Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering despite the fear she had carried for so long. She had been the one to warn him, the one to guide him through the maze of deceit, and now, the truth was finally out in the open. Clara, he said quietly, his voice measured, I understand why you told me to stay quiet now. You weren't just protecting me, you were protecting everyone from a disaster we couldn't have anticipated. Clara nodded, relief washing over her features. Yes, sir. I couldn't risk anyone else seeing it. Not until you were here. I didn't want chaos, I didn't want more harm, Anne. I wanted to make sure you could act carefully. He exhaled slowly, finally letting the anger and confusion settle. The betrayal had been immense, but the shocking reason for Clara's warning was now clear. While he had been away, someone inside his mansion, someone he had trusted implicitly, had been planning to manipulate his fortune and ruin the lives of those he cared about. The secret room contained not only evidence of financial schemes and personal betrayals but also documents that exposed dangerous connections, schemes that could have destroyed his reputation and livelihood overnight. The enormity of it all hit him. The maid's whisper, "Stay quiet," was not just a precaution, it had been a lifeline. Her fear had been real, her caution necessary. She had sensed the danger before he did, and by keeping him calm and silent, she had prevented an immediate confrontation that could have escalated into disaster. Without her intervention, he might have walked right into the trap set for him. Mr. Harrison looked around the mansion, the quiet now feeling almost sacred, as if the house itself had exhaled after holding its secrets for so long. He realized that the world of wealth and influence he had lived in was filled with hidden dangers, not always obvious, often invisible, and sometimes the closest people could be the greatest threats. But he also realized that loyalty and courage could come from the most unexpected places. Clara's careful guidance had saved him, and for that, he felt a deep, unspoken gratitude. He turned to the betrayer, who was still seated, shoulders slumped, shame etched across their face. "Everything is clear now," he said firmly. "The choices you made, the secrets you kept, the manipulation, it's all exposed. You will face the consequences, but understand this mansion, this household, and the people in it are not just property or possessions. They are lives, trust, and honor. And you have violated that." The betrayer lowered their head, knowing that there was no excuse left, no justification that could undo the damage. The reality of exposure, the certainty of accountability, and the silent judgment of both Mr. Harrison and Clara weighed heavily. They had miscalculated, Clara's intuition, Mr. Harrison's vigilance, and the evidence in the hidden room had created an unbreakable chain of truth. Clara stepped closer to Mr. Harrison, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Sir, we've faced the worst of it. The danger is gone, the truth is known, and now it's time to rebuild. The mansion, the household, they can be restored. But more importantly, trust and loyalty must be rebuilt too." Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. He realized that while the betrayal had been painful, the lesson it offered was invaluable. Wealth and power could never fully protect anyone from deceit, but vigilance, careful observation, and the courage to act at the right moment could prevent disaster. The maid's whispered warning, the courage to guide him quietly, and the careful way she had handled the situation had made all the difference. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of calm. The shocking truth had been revealed, the danger neutralized, and the lesson learned. His home, once a place of hidden secrets, had now become a place of clarity, trust, and renewed respect for those who were truly loyal. The mansion no longer held the oppressive weight of secrecy, it was a space where honesty, courage, and vigilance would define the future. As Mr. Harrison looked around, he smiled faintly, a mix of relief and determination. The ordeal had been shocking, terrifying, and painful, but it had also been illuminating. From that day forward, he knew that true loyalty was rare, trust had to be earned, and sometimes, the quietest voices, the ones that whispered warnings instead of shouting them, could be the most powerful protectors of all. Clara's hand remained lightly on his arm, a silent reminder that bravery and caution could coexist, and that even in the darkest moments, truth and vigilance could prevail. The mansion, once a symbol of luxury and control, had now become a symbol of resilience, courage, and the enduring power of trust. And in that quiet, restored space, Mr. Harrison knew one thing with absolute certainty: the shocking reason for the maid's warning had not just saved him, it had changed him forever.